Welcome to Elizabeth Davis. I'm Elizabeth Davis. What you're about to hear tonight should concern every American who is watching fuel policy, infrastructure, and affordability unfold in real time. This is not a partisan argument, and it's not a future projection. It is a case study in how policy decisions, lawsuits, and regulatory mandates can converge to create scarcity, intentionally or not, with real consequences for working families and public safety. Before we begin, subscribe to this channel. We focus on investigations that rarely make it into mainstream coverage. Like this video if you want more reporting that follows the money, the lawsuits, and the real-world outcomes. And leave a comment below with your thoughts as we walk through what is happening in California and why it matters far beyond state lines. Tonight, we are examining a single case in Fresno, California that reveals a much larger pattern. While state regulators have forced hundreds of neighborhood gas stations to shut down under a compliance mandate that can cost up to $2 million per site, an environmental lawsuit has now blocked what would have been the largest and lowest cost fuel station in Fresno's history: 32 fuel pumps, an estimated $15 million in annual tax revenue. Gas prices projected to be 50 cents to $1 below market rate. All of it stopped. The official explanation points to environmental review and traffic concerns. But the timeline tells a different story, one of policy-driven scarcity that affects both small family-owned stations and large-scale projects designed to lower prices. So how did California reach a point where restricting fuel access has become routine? And what happens when the end result is empty asphalt, fewer choices, and the growing expectation of $10 or $12 gasoline? Let's follow the project, the lawsuit, and the broader system surrounding it. The project that promised relief in Northwest Fresno. City planners approved blueprints for a development that would have reshaped the region's retail and fuel landscape. The proposal centered on a 219,000 square foot Costco warehouse, nearly double the size of a typical big box store. But what drew the most attention was what would sit outside: a 32 pump fuel station, far larger than most California stations, which typically operate with 8 to 12 pumps. This was not a neighborhood gas station. It was a high capacity facility designed to serve thousands of vehicles per day. The project also included a full-service car wash and a 47,000 square foot last-mile delivery warehouse intended to support Fresno's growing dependence on online shopping. For city officials, the numbers were difficult to ignore. Costco's fuel model is straightforward: sell gas at or near cost, often at a loss, to attract customers into the warehouse. In Fresno, that meant prices projected to undercut competitors by 50 cents to $1 per gallon. For families, the impact would have been immediate. Each fill-up could save $10 to $20. Over a year, that could mean $500 to $1,000 back into a household budget, money that could be spent on groceries, school supplies, or rent. At a time when fuel prices were rising faster than wages, that mattered. City analysts projected the site's assessed value would jump from just over $1 million to nearly $100 million. That increase would translate directly into property tax revenue, funding schools, roads, emergency services, and basic infrastructure. Construction alone was projected to inject roughly $150 million into the regional economy, creating hundreds of union jobs. Once operational, the site would support a permanent workforce across retail, logistics, and fuel operations. City documents estimated total annual economic benefit at more than $55 million. For Fresno, a mid-sized city that has watched opportunity move elsewhere for decades, this project appeared to check every box: affordability, employment, tax revenue, and infrastructure investment. The votes were lined up. Final approvals were granted, and then the lawsuit arrived. The legal challenge that stopped everything. In May 2024, just weeks after Fresno City Council issued its final approval, the Herndon-Riverside Coalition for Responsible Planning and Development filed suit. The lawsuit challenged the city's environmental review under California law, targeting both zoning classifications and greenhouse gas analysis. At the center of the case was the 47,000 square foot delivery warehouse, identified in city documents as an accessory use. Coalition attorneys argued the city failed to demonstrate that the warehouse was subordinate to the retail operation, raising zoning concerns. But the more decisive issue involved climate analysis. The city's environmental impact report relied heavily on Fresno's 2021 Climate Action Plan to justify its greenhouse gas findings. The problem was that the plan had already been invalidated by a court ruling the previous year. Despite that, the city concluded the project's emissions would be less than significant. Judge Jonathan Skiles disagreed. In a 13-page ruling, he found that Fresno's environmental review improperly relied on a legally invalidated plan and failed to provide the analysis required under state law. Traffic and stormwater issues were also noted, but the core deficiencies were zoning and climate impact review. On July 17, 2025, the court issued a writ of mandate, voiding all city approvals and halting the project until a new, legally compliant environmental review could be completed. In practical terms, the project was frozen. Costco's lease at its existing location was set to expire just 2 months later. With no guarantee that a revised review could be completed or survive another legal challenge, the risk became existential. Fresno faced losing a 40-year anchor tenant, along with the tax base, jobs, and fuel relief the project promised. Coalition leaders maintained their position was about legal compliance, not obstruction. "We just want the city to follow the law," one attorney said. But regardless of intent, the outcome was clear. The project stopped, the land remained empty, and the relief it offered never materialized. The quieter crisis spreading statewide. While Fresno's case played out in court, a quieter crisis was unfolding across California. Under Senate Bill 445, gas stations operating with single-walled underground storage tanks were required to replace them with double-walled systems by January 1st, 2026. The cost, close to $2 million per station. For independent station owners whose annual profits often hover around $50,000, compliance was financially impossible. The state offered assistance through the UST program, but owners encountered years-long delays, unanswered applications, and contractors booked solid past the deadline. Families who had operated stations for decades, Korean American, Mexican American, Indian American owners, all told similar stories: paperwork submitted, testing paid for, and no funding approval in sight. When the deadline arrived, hundreds of stations were red-tagged and forced to close, not because of leaks, not because of safety failures, but because compliance combined with bureaucratic delay made survival impossible. Entire communities lost their only fuel source. Real-world consequences. The closures had immediate effects. In rural Fresno County, fire trucks now travel up to 20 miles just to refuel. Ambulances plan routes around fuel availability. School districts shorten bus routes. What was once a 5-minute detour has become a 30-minute scramble. Then, on New Year's Eve 2025, another blow landed. The Phillips 66 refinery in Los Angeles shut down permanently, eliminating 139,000 barrels per day, roughly 8% of California's fuel supply. Shortly after, Valero announced plans to wind down operations, while Chevron moved its headquarters to Texas. Each exit tightened supply. Less capacity meant less competition. Less competition meant higher prices. In Fresno, drivers began tracking prices like stock quotes, calculating whether a 30-mile round trip for cheaper fuel made sense when the drive itself burned gallons. The irony is impossible to ignore. Policies intended to reduce emissions are now forcing longer drives, more fuel burn, and greater localized pollution. Analysts now openly discuss prices once considered unthinkable: $8 a gallon, $10, $12, a system designed for scarcity. The blocked Costco project was not an anomaly. It was a symptom. When both small family stations and large-scale relief projects face the same regulatory walls, the outcome is predictable: fewer options, higher prices, and reduced access. Across California, former gas station sites sit behind chain-link fences. Refineries continue to wind down. Capital moves elsewhere. Supply shrinks. This is not the result of war, natural disaster, or market failure. It is the cumulative effect of policy, litigation, and delay, one decision at a time. For families, the consequences are personal. They show up at the pump, in emergency response times, and in household budgets stretched thinner every month. This isn't about ideology. It's about math. Supply is shrinking. Demand is not. Prices rise. Access falls. And the gap between policy intent and real-world outcomes has never been wider. I'm Elizabeth Davis. If you found this investigation valuable, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand what's happening before it becomes irreversible. And ask yourself this final question: when the last independent station closes, when fuel hits $12 a gallon and emergency vehicles can't reach the pump in time, will anyone be held accountable? Or will we be told this was simply the cost of progress? That answer is being written right now.